Yo, what is going on, you guys, and welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video, this is the second episode of my original fan-made series, The Amazing Spider-Man. If you are new around here and this is your first time you've come across this series or my channel, I post all types of Spider-Man videos, including No Way Home news and theories, Marvel Spider-Man 2 content, and fan fictions, just like this one. Make sure to hit that subscribe button to not miss another episode, and also make sure to hit the bell next to the subscribe button so you don't miss videos as soon as they come out on the channel. You can be one of the first ones to watch the videos. If you haven't seen episode 1 yet, I'll leave a link in the description down below, and with that being said, let's get straight into the episode. Episode 2. An Amazing Fantasy. We start our episode in the Parker household. Peter has just been bitten by the spider and is upstairs in his room. He wakes up feeling different, more awake than usual, and quite frankly, healthier. He takes a deep breath in and feels his chest expand more than it ever has before. He walks downstairs and Aunt May is surprised. She says that he's been asleep for almost 2 days now. She tried to get him up for school yesterday, but he murmured and fell back to sleep. Peter's eyes widen as he knows he's going to be picked on by Flash again for missing class. May says it's a shame he was ill yesterday because her friend Anna Watson came to visit, and her niece. May says that her niece is a very nice girl and Peter would love to have met her. Uncle Ben walks into the scene and agrees with May. Peter says he's going to be late for school and leaves. We cut to a scene of Peter walking down the street. He thinks to himself about what happened the other day. It's weird how he was so certain he would have had to have gone to the hospital or at least the doctors or something. As he thinks to himself, he walks out into the middle of the street, and a truck breaking the speed limit drives full speed at Peter, not being able to stop in time. Peter, without even looking, realizes something's wrong and jumps over the truck, backflipping and landing on the side of the building. He looks as the truck goes by, breathing a sigh of relief, to look back at his hands and feet sticking to the side of the wall. Peter surprises himself and is shocked. This scene will be very reminiscent to the classic power scene from the comics. Peter looks at his hands and begins to climb the wall. What's going on? How is this possible? Peter starts experimenting more with these new abilities he's just discovered, until we transition into a full-fledged montage of Peter using his powers, jumping from building to building. We then cut to later in the episode where Peter arrives at school. Finally, although a bit late, he arrives more confident than usual. He's got superpowers. Now that's certainly something that doesn't happen every day. As he walks through the halls, he reflects and thinks to himself that it must be from that genetically enhanced spider. And then before you know it, Flash walks up to Peter. He says, "Were you off because of something I said?" And Peter thinks to himself for a moment, and what had just happened. These new powers. Flash can't touch him anymore. Peter grows more and more confident as he turns and stands up to Flash, saying he's had enough of him. Flash says, "What are you going to do about it?" as an argument breaks out between the two in the hallway. A crowd of people start to surround the two of them. Flash tries to hit Peter and Peter blocks it and trips him up on the floor. Flash slams down to the ground and Peter says never to bother him ever again. As he looks at his hands and smiles, he finally did it. He stood up to his bully. The crowd chant on as Peter walks away. Flash stands up and says he'll get him back. He'll pay for that. We then see Liz standing there as Peter walks away with her friends behind Flash and gives Peter a little smile, once again showcasing how shallow her character is. We cut to a scene with Aunt May and Uncle Ben and get introduced to the Parker money problem. This scene will be used to further explore the idea that the Parker household struggles for income after Uncle Ben retired. May and Ben will discuss with one another about how they're going to pay for Peter's college tuition. Neither of them know what they're going to do, but they both vow to each other to figure it out. They want to give Peter the best life possible. And then Peter will walk through the door as Aunt May will hide some bills behind her back. And a once somber scene becomes quite cheery as Uncle Ben explodes into enthusiasm as Peter walks through the door. Peter starts telling Uncle Ben how he stood up to Flash today and he put him in his place. And Uncle Ben says that's good, he's glad. They continue to talk as they walk off together, and we get a slow scene just between the two of them. Ben asks Peter if Flash came at him first, and Peter says yeah, of course. Ben says good, and he goes on to explain that no matter what, if Flash deserved what he got or not, you should never go after someone out of vengeance, only in self-defense. Peter nods it off, as if he's not listening, still high on the buzz that he managed to finally stand up to him. After the scene, we cut to the next day. Peter is in gym class and normally he would be the weakest at everything, but Peter starts to develop a bit of an ego, showing off in front of the class, abusing his power, knowing that he could finally do everything that Flash once bullied him about not being able to do. After showing off and after the class, Peter leaves the changing rooms and bumps into Liz in the hallway. Liz says that she's liking the new Peter Parker. She says that she's having a party tonight and was wondering if he'd like to come. And Peter says, yeah, he'd love to come to our party, and Liz says cool, and to be there at 7 tonight. Peter says of course, and Liz leaves. Peter starts thinking to himself that this spider bite is probably the best thing that's ever happened to him. He's shown up his bully, he's getting invited to parties. This is great. As you can see, Peter is starting to develop an unlikable ego where he's finally getting recognition, and it's getting to him and it's starting to get a bit out of hand. We cut to a scene at the Parker house with May and Ben. Peter is saying that he's going to a party tonight and Uncle Ben and Aunt May are surprised, saying that this never happens. What's going on? And Peter says that Liz Allen invited him. Aunt May starts banging on about being responsible and coming across very motherly, showing how caring she is for Peter. Ben says that he'll give him a ride over there. We cut to a scene outside of Liz's house. Ben and Peter pull up outside. Ben says to have a good time, and Peter says that he will, and gets out of the car and walks into Liz's house. At the party, Peter is the center of attention as he starts doing flips in the garden. Liz and Peter start to hit it off, and Peter becomes more arrogant and cockier. Liz clearly only likes him for his recent popularity, and once again showcasing her character as of right now. It gets to 10 and Peter tells Liz that he's gonna have to go because his aunt and uncle will be worrying, and Liz tells him to stay for a while. It's no biggie, it's really early. Peter looks at the time and says why not. About half an hour later he gets a call from Uncle Ben whilst talking to Liz, and ignores it. Peter, still showing off at this point, is saying that he's got something to show everyone and it will blow their minds. And just as Peter was about to jump onto the side of the wall to stick to it, Flash rolls up in his car as Flash approaches the middle of the group where Peter is. They have a face-off. Flash is shouting at Peter saying he's gonna kill him, and Peter says that he'd like to see him try. Flash tries to fight Peter, but Peter says he's had enough of this. He told him to leave him alone. Peter punches Flash in the jaw, knocking one of his teeth out, and it goes silent. The crowd is shocked as Flash's mouth starts bleeding. Flash is holding the side of his mouth. Everywhere's silent. Even the music turns off, as Peter leaves the party, awkwardly. Peter sits down by the side of the street and reflects on what had just happened. He's shocked that he just did that. He holds his head in his hands and looks back up with a face of anger and decides to walk home. We cut back to the Parker house as Peter walks through the front door. May and Ben are still up and Ben is fuming. Ben asks who the hell does he think he is, declining his calls. They've been worrying all night. Peter doesn't say a word and Ben asks for Peter to say something back, and Peter just storms off upstairs, still shook from what happened. This isn't the Peter Parker we all know and love. He's egotistical. He's arrogant. The next day, Peter is in school and Flash walks straight past him, not even saying a word, as Peter keeps his head down. He bumps into Liz again and she starts saying about how she liked having him at her party last night, and Peter says that he enjoyed it as well. Liz says to Peter that she was wondering if he'd like to take her out somewhere, and Peter says of course. Liz smiles and walks away. Peter is thinking to himself, who cares if he hit Flash? He's got the girl now too. Everything is working out for him recently. We cut later in the day just before Peter is about to go out. Peter hasn't spoken to Aunt May or Uncle Ben all day. He comes downstairs and is about to go to the milkshake cafe to meet Liz. May and Ben stand there awkwardly as Peter was about to leave until Ben speaks. He says that they got sent a medical bill today by Flash's parents. Ben says apparently you knocked the kid's teeth out. And Peter turns around and says that he deserved it. He's bullied him all his life and now he's finally had payback. Ben says just because you have this great power to knock this guy's tooth out doesn't mean you should. He says with great power comes great responsibility, and that's the type of moral obligation he should live by. Just because he deserved it doesn't mean he should get it. Peter says that he can get a job and pay the medical bill. It's not a big deal. And Uncle Ben says it's not about the medical bill, it's his actions. Peter says, oh, this is a bunch of rubbish, and leaves the house without saying anything else. We cut to the date with Liz. Liz says that she wants something to eat, but suggests the most expensive thing on the menu. Peter knows that he can't afford it and tries to speak up, but Liz insists on Peter going and ordering. Peter gets up and tries to order. He goes to the counter and gives the cashier the money folded up, hoping he wouldn't notice. Now, Peter wouldn't usually do this, I know, but his ego is through the roof at this point. He feels untouchable, and I want my version of Peter Parker to really delve deep into this egotistical nature to make his transition later on in the story to feel more impactful. The cashier takes the money and unfolds it to realize it's not enough. They ask Peter for more money, and Peter says that he hasn't got any more, but it's only a couple of dollars short, just let him have it. And the cashier tells Peter to step aside, he's holding up the queue. Peter angrily steps aside when a guy pushes past Peter and holds up a gun to the cashier to give them all the money. Peter is shocked by this. We cut back to Uncle Ben and Aunt May. They reminisce, saying that Peter is a great kid, not wondering what has gotten into him. Ben chalks it down to this Flash person finally getting to him, but hopefully he learns from his mistake. Ben says he's gonna go and pick him up and get him home safely. He says to May that he'll always love Peter, no matter what. He shuts the door behind him and drives off in his car, as Aunt May looks out of the window. We cut back to Peter in the cafe, and he stands by the door in shock of what is happening. The robber starts running towards the door after getting all the money. Peter thinks to himself he has the power to stop him. He has the power to make sure that this doesn't happen. But he thinks it's not worth his time, his trouble. It's not his problem. His ego gets in the way. Why should he help? And steps out of the way of the robber. He runs out of the door, and the robber gets away. Peter walks back outside to Liz. Liz is in shock of what had just happened. Liz is questioning what is happening, and Peter just said that the place just got robbed. Liz says it's probably best for her to go home. Peter walks with Liz back to her house. He drops her off, and Liz says that they should do this again sometime, but without the robber. There's a little moment in there where we might see a different side to Liz Allen, but she shuts the door, leaving Peter outside her house. He looks at his phone to see a voicemail from Uncle Ben. He also sees a text message saying that he's going to pick him up from Liz's, as that's where Uncle Ben assumed he was going. He looks around and he doesn't see Ben's car anywhere. Then he gets a buzzing in his head, a similar sort of feeling he got just before that car hit him the other day. Then all of a sudden, an ambulance races past. Peter looks in its direction confused. Peter walks in that direction near the Milkshake Cafe and sees a crowd of people. He walks up and approaches as the buzzing is stronger this time. Something isn't right. He can feel it. He walks through the crowd of people furiously, and as he breaks through to the middle, he sees Uncle Ben lying on the floor with blood pouring from his chest. Uncle Ben sees Peter's face and tries to mutter a few words to him as Peter breaks down to his knees, holding Ben's head in his hands. Peter says, "Stay with me," and Uncle Ben tells Peter that he loves him as the episode comes to a close. Thank you all for watching the second episode of The Amazing Spider-Man. Hopefully you are enjoying this series. If you are, make sure to hit a like on this video, and also make sure to hit that subscribe button and make sure to hit the bell next to the subscribe button to not miss another episode as soon as it does come out. With that being said, thank you guys for watching. I will see you guys in the next video. Take care and peace.